Hello, my name is Meg Jinno, and please call me Meg. I am from Brown Betty. We are a PR communication and influencer marketing agency based in London. We've been around for 7 years, and we have been doing lots of global coverage. But increasingly, because I'm Japanese, I'm getting requests on Japan. And I think that was the reason I was invited to speak today. And thank you so much for inviting today. Just quickly on the content of what I'm going to talk. First, I would like to just give a very high-level Japanese gaming market overview, but Newzoo has done a brilliant job, so I'm not going to go deep on this at all. It's just how we see from the PR and communication point of view, especially by viewing the Twitter, by listening to Twitters, and a lot of social media, as well as YouTube and what's going on in the market. So our point of view is purely from the PR and influencer marketing point of view. So it might not reflect the actual market data point of view. And then I will touch base on PR, content creator marketing, and community building in Japan. Again, Tomofumi have done a brilliant job. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I just wanted to highlight the Steam user estimate. This is an estimate that I have found from the Valve's blog post, I think from last year. And there's estimated about 1.9 million users on Steam. And there's more if you add other platforms as well. So Steam has been a very marginal, or PC game has been quite marginal for a very long time, but I think I started to see a trend, upward trend in this particular platform. So I think that is very interesting. The market share, I think the Newzoo's, I also took this from the Newzoo's same sources from Famisa's annual report. And Nintendo is dominant platform, and that is that we are seeing lots of activity also on YouTube as well as social media. So we know that is the main platform there. But at the same time, the indie games and indie games are doing also very well on Switch market. For example, Sakuna of Rise and Ruin that was released last year. It is developed by the Japanese indie developer, and it has been covered widely by the content creators in Japan across the board. Very popular there as well. And the same thing went for Little Nightmare 2 Japan. And they have been doing quite well on both influencer front as well as, I think, and it is reflecting to the sales as well. One funny one that I discovered actually while I was doing the research was a Human Fall Flat. They've been released quite a while ago, and there was a surge of unit sales, box sales in Japan. And I have checked what's going on the content marketing. And there was a period of time when there was not many games being released. So the content marketers started to play this game. This kind of physics-based funny games are very popular among the content creator in Japan. So when there's a quiet period, they tend to go back to that kind of, that kind of a physics-based fun games. And I think that happened, and it reflects to the sales unit figure here. And I think it shows the power of the content creators, influencers in Japan. They do actually affect the number of sales in Japan. So it's one of the main focus as we do the promotion in Japan. Again, and just looking from the PR point of view, PlayStation users and Steam users tend to be, and I think it's reflected on the Newzoo's data as well. I think they are the older, mature, more hardcore gamers. And just listening and looking at the type of content, and also the content, the fan-based reviews. PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, the players seem to be more focused on the quality of the games, and PC Steam players seem to be looking for the variety of the games because there's so many games that they can try and play. But interesting thing is the kind of game that they play seem to be very similar to the kind of game that they play outside of Japan as well. So it's not as Japan specific or unique to Japan. I think this is more global and universal. Although there are certain categories, as Yuzu has mentioned, that Japanese players favors, like RPGs. RPG do really well. I have been listening a lot. There's lots of social media activity happening right now, for example, for Valheim. And that is a kind of RPG game that will do really well in Japan. So moving on from the overall view of the Japanese market, I am going to talk a little bit about PR. That is our main focus. If you take a look at the logos, I think you might be familiar with some of them. Famitsu being the top, but also GameSpot, GameWatch, Full Gamers, and all this. And there's also 30 or 40 key press out there that we look for the coverage. The key difference between Japan and the UK coverage is that you very rarely get the reviews. It's very news focused. And the reason for that is because most of the articles are written by freelancers in Japan these days, and they are paid by the number of articles that they produce and the views. So for them, it makes more economic sense to write news than review, because review takes time to play the game and write about it, whereas news is much more simple. But there are good things about the news coverage to gaining as many news coverage in the key media as possible, because they can actually be picked up by wider reach media such as Yahoo Japan and Line and Live Door News, and curators sites such as Smart News and Nossi. So, and that will go to a huge number of readers. So it is important to actually make sure that your game covers in as many key gaming media as possible. Also, those key medias they post their article on Twitters. So they say, well, they do the title announcement the subtitle announcement or the article name on the tweet. They tweet about the article basically. And there's huge activities happening on Twitter, like likes and retweets. And it acts as a barometer of how successful your game is going to be in Japan, or what kind of interest you're gaining for that game. The highly anticipated game can get thousands of likes and retweets. If they're not interested, you probably get 10 or 20. So you can really tell how much it really acts as a barometer. Also, the fan of certain content, some of the fan of the content creator will say, oh, this game would be perfect for this kind of content creator. I would like him to play. And the content creators are actually watching very carefully on what's going on Twitter. So that's another reason why you want to be covered by as many media outlets as possible in Japan. So how to run a successful PR, a press release in Japan is really simple, but it's not very simple, it's not easy. They have to be in Japanese, in a Japanese PR format, and it has to be written in the right way. So machine translation of press release is actually not very good, because it doesn't actually highlight, it's sometimes mistranslated. And also, exact translation doesn't really actually mean anything sometimes. So I think it has to be actually translated by a person. And if the game is localized, mention it, because Japanese people like to play it in Japanese. And a lot of time, that one line of this will be localized is missing from the press release. If you have assets, also translate them, especially trailers, subtitle them if there's lots of explanation with the voiceovers. Also, be aware of the time difference. Japan is 9 hours ahead of London. The medias are becoming a lot easier to work with when it comes to embargo. But you have to pre-sell them, you have to translate the press release. So you have to really calculate the time ahead in order to, you have to just, make sure that you calculate the time that you're going to do that to pre-pitch the media. And also press contact in Japanese. I have received the several email requests or questions from the press, but they have mentioned that if I could only contact in English, I would not have contacted you. So it is also very important to have somebody who can speak Japanese to be listed as a press contact. If you're lucky enough to get interviews on Studio Piece, we recommend that you translate and reply in Japanese. All the replies in Q&A in you translate it on your end rather than having freelancers or the journalists to do that for you. I have seen several misunderstandings happening for the mistranslation, and also it makes their life a lot easier. So they are more willing to work with you if you do that for them. So that's the very simple how to run a good PR campaign in Japan. Now moving on, so now you have done the press release and you want to contact the influencer. What are you going to do about that? And who are they and where are they? So content creators in Japan are in different platforms. YouTube is obviously the biggest platform in Japan as well. Twitch is starting to gain interest among the streamers, especially the esports streamers. But there are Japanese video content sites such as Nico Nico, Tweetcasting, OpenRec, and Mirative, and Nildum. Tweetcasting and Mirative are specifically targeted for the mobile game content creators. OpenRec tend to have many very specific sponsored events. They organize lots of sponsored events there. And I like to highlight Nico Nico here because I cannot stress the importance of Nico Nico as a platform in Japan for the content creators. Nico Nico has been in Japan for probably 15 to 20 years. It was established 15 to 20 years ago. And it is a community-based, fun-driven video content platform. So you will see thousands and thousands of video being produced by anime, game, and basically those fans. Producing like short video, maybe 10 minutes videos, viewed by probably 10 to 100 people, and there's thousands of them. But what they have been doing, really great job throughout the period since the launch, is that they identify key content creators, and for many years they have been organizing a live event and invite those content creators to the stage, and they created this mini superstar through those live event. Those Nico Nico players, unfortunately, has moved to YouTube about 5 to 6 years ago. Started to move to YouTube because it's very hard to monetize and make a living out of Nico Nico. And so they moved to YouTube, and it actually coincided with the time when Steam started to take off in Japan. And I think those ex-Nico Nico creators have had a lot to do with that wider Steam interest, widening Steam interest. I think the reason being, Nico Nico creators tend to cover multiple platforms. They also are competing with each other on coverage. So they are not afraid of going into non-localized PC games. And many of them actually play with mouse and keyboard. And even with Apex Legends, they're all playing Apex right now, this group of players. But they are all playing with mouse and keyboard. So it's interesting that, how they are much more comfortable playing on a PC platform than other type of content creators. If you take a top 100 content creators list, majority, I would say 30 or 40% of them are from this group of ex-Nico Nico creators. They have the followers number anywhere between 100,000 to 2 to 3 million followers. And when they create videos, their video view can be the minimum 100,000 views, going up to millions, 2 million views. So they are extremely influential. Also, according to some research done recently, 30 to 40% of their viewers are actually gamers. So if you are able to get 2 or 3 of them cover your game, most likely your sales is will go up. And I have seen that several times happening that, once they start playing, all of a sudden you see the game, the unit sales going up. So they are extremely important. I always emphasize them as a key priority group when I do the outreach. And they are the YouTubers, more recent content creators. I call them YouTubers in general, but this is really mixed kind of group of people. For example, the biggest YouTubers is called Hikaking, and he is he's the guy in the green background, and he is probably the one of the most well watched YouTuber in Japan. But his target is is for the wide range of people, and his platform preference tend to be more wide range platform, therefore. So it can be Switch, or it can be mobile. And there are other variety of people. There are ex-comedian. They start to go, the real life comedian start to do YouTube, playing games, esports players also becoming a YouTubers, doing the game broadcasting and streaming. And there's lots of variety. So it's really important to understand what they have been covering in the past. And there's another category of unique content creators in Japan, and that is VTubers. There's a lot of them who does, so it's basically animated character voiced by themselves, and they play games and do other things too. They do singing, they do merchandise, they have a big merchandising page. They act like a huge, the whole things, whole package of entertainment. What's really interesting about these VTubers is that most of the viewers are actually viewing them through mobile phone. And they tend to be younger than older people who are following them. So they work in certain platform, but not all platform in terms of content marketing. Reaching out to these VTubers, most YouTubers or content creators, they don't really speak English. So it's important to reach out to them in Japanese. Also, if your game is in early access or you don't have a very big tutorial, we recommend that you prepare a guide so that they won't drop it after they play for 10 minutes and they give up. Guide in Japanese. And you can offer keys, but very often they don't accept it. So, and I asked why they wouldn't accept it, because I was getting so many rejection for key offers, and they say they don't want to feel obliged. So they don't want to feel they have to cover the game. So they don't want to accept it. And I think that's a very unique, I don't get that from the Western content creators much, but in Japan, that is the answer of why, that is the reason why they don't want to accept the keys from us. Also, making yourself available through Twitter, direct mail is very important. I have received several times that they're just about to go live stream in 30 minutes and they can't finish a tutorial. Do you know when I can finish it? Or I'm having a technical issue. Can I have what can I do? And very urgent contacts are usually comes through the Twitter DM. So make yourself available, especially if they tell you in advance that when they're going live. Now quickly going to the community building aspect of things. I think it's important to remember that community is not a short-term thing, it is a long-term thing. So I don't think you would want to start a community if you don't have a C-course or content update or other releases planned at the publisher. So that's really the key thing to look into, what are you going to have in the future? Also, making sure that your game is in popular genre or popular category in Japan, and they are localized, and you're really, because that shows how serious you are about the market. And the level of activities on social media, it's also very important to, actually, it's the easiest way to see how popular your content are is by doing hashtag and game name and see how many Japanese are actually tweeting about you. If you are in early access, see how many fun videos are there, and also if the creativity is flowing. One of the key things that I will also look for is your game moddable, or can they do the level creation easily? Japanese are very creative set of people, players. There's a lot of creative set of players in Japan who loves to mod, and if you have that added into your game, you start to see a lot of amazing creation coming out of Japan. Platform-wise, Japanese people look for anonymity, so Facebook doesn't really work. And I think for them, Twitter is a preferred platform. Discord has started to take off. They're starting to say, well, I might just try it out. But it is that stage. Reddit is not doing very well in Japan so far, but that might change as well. Also, it's very important to check out the local platforms. I can give you one example. I work with a company called Lo-Fi Games. They are a Bristol-based company, and they have a very popular game in Japan called Kenshi. And 3 years ago, while they were in early access, they contacted me saying, well, I'm getting a lot of sales from Japan, but I don't know what's going on. And so I looked at what was going on, and everything was done on Nico Nico Doga and Nico Nico. So that was a platform that lots of fun videos are coming out, are being produced. And there was this particular one content creator called Ponshu who was creating this one video series called Kiritan ga Koya wo Iku. I think by now, Ponshu has created about 40 episodes, but at that time it was about 12 episodes. And that video has been actually generating a huge number of new users for Kenshi. And some people call it the mother of Kenshi because that's how they produce lots of children, like new users, and therefore they call it the mother of Kenshi. But that shows how important that you look into the local Japanese platform as well, and not just YouTube or Twitch or Twitter. There's lots going on the local side as well. On content side of things, I have to stress how important patch notes and update and community updates are translated into Japan, and also posted at the same time when you post it in English. Patch note is especially important if you have modding capability, because they are spending weeks and weeks creating the mod, and sometimes the patch can actually overhaul whatever I've been doing in the past week. So it's really important to translate that and for them. I also, when we run the community for Japanese community, we'll do mix and match of the international content as well as the Japanese content, and we do translate the captions and sometimes make a little bit of a Japanese twist to it. Also, maintaining friendly but official tone is important. If you're too familiar or too friendly, when there's a problem, you cannot actually intervene. And also, they expect you to be a little bit more official and have a little bit of a distance from the fans. But I think most importantly, it's important to treat Japanese community as you treat your English community, and also always plan what you're going to do for the Japanese community, as you plan the English community, plan for the English community activities. One thing I didn't mention today is about mobile game industry. As you have found from Yuzu's presentation, it's very different. There's lots of media mix happening. There's lots of different activities going on. And I didn't have enough time to actually cover everything. So I have not mentioned anything about mobile game today. But for overall, on PR, community building, and on influencers, the basic information on reaching out in Japanese is a key drive for whichever platform you are on and whichever platform you are promoting for. So that is the end of presentation from me.
Right, Meg, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that. Really detailed and instructive. So thank you for that. And I have to thank you actually I remember when we met quite a few years ago, you started saying to me, we need to do more events on the Japanese market, and that we've come full circle and come back to you now. So thank you for really pushing me to get events like this on.
Well, thank you for inviting.
Well, I'm really interested in there seems to be, and we hear it from Yuzu, and you referenced it as well, there's a definite interest, an increased interest in games that are made from outside of Japan. That seems to be a trend in the market. But do you have a sense for what a Japanese consumer thinks about UK developed games in particular? Is there affinity with UK games, and is there an increased appetite to play UK developed games?
I think Japanese people have difficulty identifying what's UK game and what's US game. So it's a Western game, it's a Western game. But they do like, but UK games are doing really well in Japan. For example, Fall Guys was huge when it came out. And I think they really follow, most of the players actually follow what the content creators are doing. And they are actually the driving force of, the trend in Japan. So I don't think they understand what's UK game. It's a Western game. But they definitely have more appetite toward the Western game than in the past. I think just looking at how Valheim is doing in Japan, for example, and just by Twitter, listening to Twitters and stuff like that, it's just amazing how much activities are already happening over there as well. And I thought Japan has been for very long. Japan has been this isolated little island. At least in the game market, but I think it's changing recently.
Okay, that's fascinating. Thank you very much for that. That's an interesting sort of idea and a nice incentive there, and an interesting thing about the distinction. A final question on the sort of the content creators. Now, you talk about their integrity is really important. They don't just want to take keys and without knowing they're going to cover the games. But from a UK company's perspective, let's say we've got UK developers and publishers or studios watching, how can they track what the content creators are saying about their games if they don't speak the language? There are certain challenges of doing so. How can they track that?
Oh, that's a different one, because they all do videos in Japanese, and I think it's very hard unless you have somebody who understands Japanese watching for you. So
is that a service you offer, Meg? Maybe I'm giving you a chance to pitch your company.
Yeah. So yeah, we do. We are obsessively watching Japanese video YouTubers. Nika, we are always around watching them, and also we are listening a lot on Twitter, because they also tweet a lot. There's lots of activities going on tweet, and Japanese people love that platform. Twitter is one of the big gaming platforms in Japan. So if you listen, you can get a lot out of that as well, not just by watching YouTubes and videos, but from just listening, basically.
Well, based on what you said today, I think there's going to be quite a few companies wanting to contact you afterwards to talk about how them promote their games in Japan. So thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that.